Hey everyone, I wanted to make another video touching on values, why it's so important to cover this topic more and more, as we're seeing a lot of people coming in with value-related fears. Now, value-related fears have always been common when it comes to, say, POCD, harm OCD, HOCD, real event false memory, cheating, religious, a wide spectrum of different themes, all really coming down to the fear of rejection by society and your family members, and then fear of self-rejection, the way it makes you feel. But currently, we're kind of seeing a big increase in this when people are coming in, and they usually say the same thing. They say, hey, look, I'm working with someone. They're constantly telling me to live by my values. I feel like they don't understand OCD. I've gotten some good points from them when it comes to exposures, which is great. But it really isn't unlatching because I'm really afraid of going against my values and I don't really know how to break this down. And then we have to go through and break all the fears down. So I wanted to make another video speaking about values, talking about why I don't really use the term values because of the way it's kind of lost its weight in what it means. Other words that kind of correlate with that, and then we'll go from there. Before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button, comment down below. I always like to engage with lots of people. Again, this is something that we're seeing a lot. If you're struggling with this, if you feel like you're in a dark place, please email us at info@ocdrecovery.com. Again, that is info@ocdrecovery.com, and we'll get back to you in a timely fashion. Now, what tends to happen is social media is the number one place where most people get their mental health information because it's so widely accessible. You could see it in all different types of continents and areas of the world, and it's very up to date. I mean, you take someone like myself, I upload anywhere between 120 to 200 Instagram posts a month. So there's lots of information out there. Now you're trying to decipher what information is valid, what has good experience, anecdotal experience. Is there any validity in what a lot of people say? Are things as easy as they are, et cetera, et cetera? So when you look at the words that have been watered down, and unfortunately, once a word has been watered down, it's very hard for that word to gain its context again. So trauma, narcissist, gaslighting. Those are really the big ones. Work-life balance is a phrase. Those terms have no meaning anymore because everyone is a trauma victim nowadays. Now, there are people out there that have gone through tremendous tragedies and injustices, but they're much more far and in between when you look at how the word trauma is being used. It's not to say that the word is inherently bad or good. It's just been watered down so much that it really doesn't mean anything anymore. Narcissist is the same thing. The way narcissist is being used is anyone that says something that's mean or I don't agree with is a narcissist. And because that's the way society sees it, there's a lot of people who have fears about being a narcissist. What if I'm a narcissist? What if I have narcissistic personality disorder? What if I'm really a bad person? So we really do words a disservice when we use them in a very wishy-washy manner. And what we're seeing now is the word value. And I think this trend will continue until we kind of pendulum swing to the other side again, which is usually what humans do. We go from one extreme to the other, and the masses have a very hard time. People love when I do this, but balancing in the middle. That's where the Stoic philosophy is. It's not a lack of emotion. I'm very emotional. I feel a wide spectrum of emotions, but they're much more balanced. So it's really unfortunate that this has happened, but the word values has now been watered down to a very wishy-washy term. Now, you will see the term values being used all the way from, the right of the wall, let's say the most, right-sided leaning policies. We'll use it in this. These are my values. These are my religious values. If you go against this, you go against God. And we have a whole nother spectrum of fears based there. But then the values swing to the other way, which now you're at the far, far left. And that becomes a problem where the values are being held so tightly that if other people don't share your values, you have to cancel them. And we really have a society of extremely low frustration tolerance, and it's creating a massive divide. Now, the reason why I wanted to premise with this opening is because if you look at what the word value means, all it is something that you enjoy to do and something that you put meaning into and strive to live your life by that. And that's the farthest we need to go with that. Now, anything that we value and we attach to our identity leaves the door wide open for the fear of fear. What if I go against my values? What if this means something about me? What if I can't live up to my values in a religious context or a relationship context? And then you have people that work with lots of people, which is an unfortunate scenario because it's not easy to understand how simplistic a simple term can really make an OCD and anxiety suffer go haywire when they don't understand the terms when they're working with someone. And they say, someone comes in with, say, POCD or harm OCD or any type of responsibility OCD, self-harm, and they say, look, that goes completely against your values. The OCD brain cannot differentiate between a black and white value that you're holding versus maybe some other person who doesn't have a mental health disorder. So then you think, oh my gosh, if this person's living to their values, I'm not going to be able to live to my values. Now, I personally don't use the word values. I think when you become very stoic in nature, you just look at things for the way they are, and you don't need to label them. That's the same thing like the trauma. Like, I don't view my OCD experience as traumatic. My next video I'm going to do is a deep dive into my mental health experience, hospital experience, 96 hours, incorrectly diagnosed and put into a padded room because I was a real big threat to myself, not being able to sleep, them wanting me to take mood stabilizing medications, which is, what to expect when you go there. I don't hold that against them. I don't view that as traumatic at all. I don't view my father dying as cancer as traumatic. Now, I decide to do that because it gives me the edge, I believe, on myself with my personal perspectives on life. I just look at things for what they are, which is really unfortunate in many scenarios, but overall not 100% horrible or I can't stand it. And the value perspective is the same thing. I don't use the word values in my vocabulary because I just have things I like. I like to stay healthy and feel healthy. I enjoy working and discipline and reading and learning. I enjoy helping OCD sufferers. I enjoy spending time with my wife and my dogs. But I don't say I value those things. And the reason why is because this is really hard to explain when you're still stuck in the value cycle. You're attaching that value to your identity and your sense of self. Now, this is a problem because let's take a simple example. A football player, American football, or UK, soccer or the American football, whatever you want to call it. A lot of athletes around the world, their value systems are based on being an athlete, which is understandable. They've been praised their whole life. They've been told they're the best of the best. A lot of them get pushed through school, so they already have an inflated sense of ego. I went to a D1 school. The school I was at, they actually won, I believe, the Orange Bowl. They were the #1 college football team in the country. And a lot of kids are pushed through school because they believe they have a future in the NFL, which is a problem because you're doing them a disservice. Anytime you push someone through an experience that they could benefit from, whether they fail or not, you actually want people to fail because learning comes from failure. It doesn't come from consistent winning. Consistent winning actually clouds your judgment in the majority of cases. So this is something that's really difficult for people to hear. So back to the value sense, when your identity is attached into your athletics and you break your leg, a lot of people might get extremely anxious or depressed. And unfortunately, we see people who take their own lives. Now, this is all because of a belief that life should go their way and that things should have been easier for them. But that's not how life works. Now, when I look at the things in my life, the values I hold now, I'm just going to use the word values. And although, like I said, I don't really use that word in common language for myself, but let's just use it for the remainder of this video. The values of all the things I stated, those values can change at any moment. Maybe I get into a car accident and lose my leg. And now one of my new focuses and my new values in life is helping drunk drivers. Maybe I'm hit by a drunk driver, or maybe I was the one that was drinking and driving, etc. And I changed that around. The values I held when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 look different than the values I held when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, look different from the values I held at 23, 24, 25, and look different than the values I've held from 31, 2, 3, and up to 34 this year. So I think that's really important, that values are malleable. And values don't need to directly correlate with why you need a purpose in life. Now, having a purpose in life has great importance. It's why the book Man's Search for Meaning is on the reading list. And having a meaning to strive towards is great. But it's also important to be aware that that meaning can change at any moment. The reason why we talk about this in the moderation and balanced approach is because right now on the internet, we're filled with black and white rigid thinking, which is a problem for many people. These are your values. You need to live by these values. You must respect my values. But losing one's value, or the fear of not feeling connected to one's value, keyword feel, as I always say, it's a fear of rejection. What if the community I'm in sees I don't value this stuff anymore? What if they don't want to talk to me anymore? What if my value on health changes and I no longer want to really be healthy and I kind of turn to a couch potato? What is my family going to think about me? What if I change careers? What if I'm in finance? I change and want to open up a garden store and I want to be a gardener. Are they going to make fun of me? Are they going to tell me I'm weak? Et cetera, et cetera. So, the most important thing that you want to remember is, in my opinion, is when you're looking at the values you hold, that those values are only unique to yourself because of how you weight them. Now, the kickback I get back on that is they say to me, well, Nick, that can't be true. What if you have 100 people? We'll use just a religious context. It's easy. 100 Christians, 100 people who practice Islam. Each one of them might hold a particular value, say a value of being a good person, but that might be tweaked for each person. Maybe one person does this particular aspect in helping other people, where one person in the Christianity faith feels like it's more important to be around their family and maybe not be so involved with others. So it looks different from person to person, but the values that you hold don't need to be respected and they don't need to be accepted. Now, when something is not respected and or accepted, it gives us a feeling of defeat, a feeling of loss of connection. Now, that feeling isn't comfortable, but what you can do is you can learn to wear that feeling as best as you can. So it's important to use the books on the reading list, the first book specifically, How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, yes, anything, at OCDrecovery.com underneath the resource tab, and start breaking down the value-related fears. Then the third book on our reading list, The Myth of Self-Esteem, breaking down that we don't need other people to accept us and or respect us. Yes, there's great benefits in being accepted. There's great benefits in being respected in relationship status and societal views, cultural perspectives, business and money and career. But those are all good and fun, but they're not absolutely necessary for life. And I think that's the most important thing to cover. Now, again, there's things I like to do, but I choose to not use the word value because of the way it's been watered down. And I think this is something that would benefit the OCD and anxiety community to think about. Now, you can have things to strive towards, but if you deeply hold on to those values, and this is what I want to say for the summary, if you deeply hold on to those values and you think that you must live and feel a sense of just right connection, just right feeling connection, OCD will always have the upper hand. You want to get comfortable with the loss of connection to your values. The fear that maybe you will be rejected by your friends and family members. Maybe there's a jail-related fear. Maybe there's a cheating-related fear and loss of losing control. Breaking those fears down, remember, acceptance doesn't mean agreement. Realizing that you can accept yourself as a fallible human being while disliking. One of the major myths out there, I see this a lot, is that if you don't strive to always be better, that you're a loser. And that acceptance doesn't mean agreement is a weak stance, but I see it as the opposite. I think it's the more sensible choice once you've been practicing it for long periods of time. That's why I like to live my life very stoically, and I take other values from Greco-Roman philosophy, such as Epicureanism, and I do use Taoism. And I like listening to different people and picking and choosing things I like and applying it to my life. I don't do it because I'm trying to hone in on a set of values that I want to live by, even though there's things I really like to do. Thank you so much for watching this. Again, if you're really struggling with this, if you've been working with someone who doesn't quite understand the values thing and they're kind of just shoving it in your face, it's not anyone's fault. It's not easy to understand how the OCD mind will latch onto this. Again, that is info@OCDrecovery.com, and we'll get back to you in a timely fashion. Have a good one, everyone.